The next process we'll be looking at is the vendor invoice process from the procurement cycle perspective. The procurement cycle is typically handled in procurement and sourcing as the entry point, and that would start from your purchase requisition through to your purchase order, and then passing over to your finance department for receipting and invoicing. As for the procurement process, the entry points are identical to the vendor invoice process, and as such I'm going to go straight to a vendor invoice to show you the functionality added there. If we just create a new vendor invoice, system will prompt us for an account, enter our mandatory invoice number, and this is where, if the transaction was captured from a purchase order, the system would automatically generate the link to the purchase order, or you could add the link manually after the fact. This would then inherit the transactions from the purchase order down as individual lines on the invoice, and the recharge transactions or the recharge markers would be assigned at that point as well. Let me just add a line here. Just going to do some computer expenses, for example. And we're going to take an interesting number here. So only mandatory fields that are required. If you have obviously financial dimensions, you could then capture financial dimensions. And specifically for this demo, to compare back to the demo on the vendor invoice journal or the general journal process, I'm going to select the same department I selected in that regard. If we go back to the line details and just save this record, we will see that the cost center and the related allocation are automatically set by the system. This is once again because of the unique setup in the allocation restrictions, allowing us down to an individual one-to-one relation. If this was not allowed, or in other words, if the system did not pick up a single allocation, maybe multiple allocations were available, the system would not be able to default this by standard, and the user would have to select from the list of potential allocation groups available. Once the information is captured, you then have the ability to submit to workflow, which most customers would be utilizing. In this demo, I've disabled workflow simply so that I can post directly. Once the invoice is posted, the system then has the invoice available for recharging onto the individual expense companies or target companies as per the recharge setup.